There's a dynamic happening quietly across every city, every dating app, every relationship so invisible that most men don't even realize they're caught inside it. A man meets a woman, there's an attraction. He feels something stir in him he hasn't felt in months, maybe years. He starts texting more. He clears his schedule. He starts checking his phone between meetings, during workouts, and late at night before sleep. He begins to orient his week around her availability. And somewhere in that process, without a single argument or dramatic moment, something shifts. She becomes less responsive. Her texts get shorter. She cancels plans. And when he asks what changed, she says nothing's wrong. But her behavior tells a different story. He doesn't understand it. He was doing everything right. He was present, attentive, and emotionally available. He was exactly what modern culture told him women wanted. And yet, the more he gave, the less she wanted him. This isn't an accident. It's not bad luck. It's not a coincidence that keeps repeating across different women, different cities, different years of your life. It's a psychological structure as old as human desire itself, and it operates with machine-like precision whether you see it or not. The man who doesn't understand this structure will spend years confused, repeating the same pattern, wondering why his honesty and effort seem to work against him. The man who does understand it, who sees the invisible architecture beneath the surface, gains access to a kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. It's the power of withdrawal, not as a tactic, not as manipulation, but as the natural consequence of a man who has reorganized his life around something women can't give him, his own respect. By the end of this, you'll see exactly why the man who learns to withdraw, not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in sovereignty, becomes the man women can't stop thinking about. And you'll see why the man who can't withdraw, who keeps giving and explaining and pursuing, becomes invisible even when he's standing right in front of her. Arthur Schopenhauer spent most of his life alone. He lived in Frankfurt in the mid-19th century, writing in a small apartment with a poodle for company, watching the world from a distance most men never choose. He wasn't a hermit by accident. He was a man who understood something brutal about human nature, something that modern men are only now beginning to rediscover through pain. That desire is not a feeling you have, it's a force that has you. Schopenhauer called it the will, not willpower, not ambition, but a blind, biological drive that moves through you, using your thoughts and emotions as instruments to achieve its own ends. And nowhere is this will more powerful, more deceptive, more capable of destroying a man's clarity than in his attraction to women. Schopenhauer's central thesis about romantic love was this: what we call love is nature's trick to ensure reproduction. The man believes he's pursuing happiness, connection, and meaning, but underneath that story, biology is writing the script. The will doesn't care about your fulfillment. It cares about continuation, and it will use the most sophisticated illusions, beauty, romance, the fantasy of completion to make you serve its agenda. The moment you center your life around a woman, the moment you make her your source of validation and meaning, you stop being the author of your own existence. You become a servant to the will. And here's the part most men learn too late. A woman's attraction is not sustained by service. It's sustained by a man's refusal to be consumed by her. Let me say that again, because this is the spine of everything that follows. A man who centers his life around a woman slowly becomes the kind of man she cannot respect. This plays out in 1,000 micro-behaviors most men don't even notice. A man starts dating a woman. In the beginning, he has his own life. He has his gym routine, his work projects, his friendships, his mission, whatever that mission is. She finds this attractive. She feels his groundedness. She senses that his attention is a gift, not a necessity. But then something shifts. He starts to like her. He starts to imagine a future, and without realizing it, he begins to negotiate with himself. He skips the gym because she wants to see him. He cancels plans with friends because she's free that night. He starts texting her throughout the day, checking in, asking how she's feeling, trying to maintain a connection that used to form naturally. He thinks he's being loving. He thinks he's showing commitment. But what he's actually doing is transferring the center of his psychological gravity from himself to her. And she feels it. She doesn't need to articulate it. She doesn't need to understand the philosophy behind it. She feels the shift in his energy. Where there used to be a man with his own direction, there's now a man waiting for her direction. Where there used to be a man whose attention felt valuable because it was scarce, there's now a man whose attention feels suffocating because it's constant. Schopenhauer would say this is the moment the will has fully captured him. He's no longer a man, he's a function, a provider of validation, resources, and emotional labor. And the cruel irony is this: the more he gives, the less she values it. Not because she's ungrateful, but because human desire doesn't work that way. We don't desire what we already possess. We desire what eludes us. We desire what we might lose. I work with men who come to me in this exact state. They're confused. They've done everything right according to the cultural script. They've been vulnerable, communicative, and emotionally available. They've prioritized the relationship. They've made sacrifices. And the woman they did all this for has gone cold. She says she needs space. She says she's not sure what she wants. She says she loves him but isn't in love with him. And he can't make sense of it because in his mind, love is something you build through effort and consistency. But that's not how attraction works. Attraction isn't built. It's triggered, and is triggered by a man's ability to remain separate, to remain whole, to remain directed by something she can't control. Let me show you how this collapse actually happens, step by step, in the interior of a man's life. It starts with a thought that seems harmless. I should text her. He's at work. He's in the middle of a task. But the thought appears and he doesn't question it. He pulls out his phone and sends a message. She doesn't respond for an hour. He notices. He tells himself he doesn't care, but he checks his phone 3 more times in the next 20 minutes. When she finally replies, it's short. He reads it multiple times, trying to decode the tone. He wonders if he said something wrong. He drafts a response, deletes it, and drafts another. He's trying to maintain a connection, but what he's actually doing is handing her the remote control to his nervous system. This becomes a pattern. He starts organizing his day around her texting rhythms. He keeps his phone on the table during meetings. He checks it at red lights, in the bathroom, right before bed. He starts to notice when she's online but not replying to him. He sees her post a story on Instagram and wonders why she has time for that, but not for him. He doesn't say anything because he doesn't want to seem insecure, but the thought loop has started. And once it starts, it spreads. It moves from texting into every other area. He starts worrying about how he looks, whether he's interesting enough, and whether she's losing interest. He starts performing. He tries to be funnier, more attentive, more emotionally intelligent. He starts asking her how she's feeling, what she's thinking, if everything's okay between them. And every time he asks, he's communicating the same thing. I need you to reassure me that I'm enough. And she can't, because the question itself is the problem. A man who needs reassurance is a man who has lost his center. And a man who has lost his center cannot hold a woman's respect, no matter how much she wants to give it to him. Schopenhauer understood this with surgical clarity. He wrote that the man who organizes his happiness around a woman has placed his well-being in the hands of chance. He has made himself dependent on something. He cannot control her moods, her desires, her shifting emotions. And in doing so, he has violated the first law of masculine sovereignty. Never give another person the power to destabilize your peace. The man doesn't see this while it's happening. He thinks he's building intimacy. He thinks he's deepening the relationship. But what he's actually doing is exposing himself without boundaries. He's giving her full access to his emotional state, his insecurities, his need for validation. And while modern culture tells him this is healthy, while therapists and relationship coaches praise emotional vulnerability, the woman in front of him is quietly losing attraction, not because she's shallow, not because she doesn't value emotional depth, but because vulnerability without strength is not intimacy, it's a burden. She doesn't want to mother him. She doesn't want to manage his emotions. She wants to feel that he can hold his own gravity, that he has something in his life more important than her approval. I once spoke to a man who had been in a relationship for 3 years. He described it as a slow erosion. In the beginning, she pursued him. She texted first. She made plans. She initiated sex. But over time, all of that reversed. He found himself doing all the pursuing. He'd plan the dates. He'd initiate the conversations. He'd bring up the future. And every time he did, she'd become distant. He couldn't understand it. He loved her. He was trying to show her that. But the more he showed it, the more she pulled away. When I asked him what he did with his time outside the relationship, he went quiet. He couldn't answer, because there was no time outside the relationship. His life had become a waiting room for her attention. This is the third phase of the collapse, self-abandonment. The man stops doing the things that made him attractive in the first place. He stops going to the gym because she doesn't care if he's in shape. He stops pursuing his projects because she says she just wants to spend time with him. He stops seeing his friends because they don't understand the relationship the way she does. He stops challenging himself because challenge creates tension, and he's afraid tension will push her away. So he makes himself smaller. He makes himself softer. He makes himself available. And in doing so, he erases the very qualities that sparked her desire. She doesn't leave him right away, but something inside her turns off. She becomes critical. She picks fights over small things. She accuses him of not listening, not understanding, not being present, even though he's more present than he's ever been. What she's really saying, though she may not have the language for it, is this: you've stopped being a man I have to reach for. The man she later pursues, whether it's after they break up, or in the quiet fantasies she has while still with him, looks similar on the surface. He might have the same job, the same hobbies, the same values, but the difference is invisible and absolute. He hasn't centered his life around her. He hasn't abandoned his direction to accommodate her moods. He hasn't made her the judge of his worth. And because of that, his attention feels different. It feels rare. It feels like something she could lose. And that possibility that she might not be enough to keep him creates the very attraction the first man destroyed by trying too hard to maintain. Schopenhauer would say this is the will revealing its nature. The man thought he was acting out of love, but he was acting out of fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. And fear, when it drives behavior, creates the exact outcome it's trying to avoid. The man who's afraid of losing her becomes the man she can't stay with. The man who's willing to lose her becomes the man she can't forget. But this isn't just about one man and one woman. This is a pattern woven into the entire structure of modern dating, modern culture, modern civilization. Schopenhauer lived in a world where men still had social roles that gave them purpose outside of romantic relationships. They had wars to fight, businesses to build, frontiers to explore, and religious structures that told them what it meant to be a man. Those structures are gone. The modern man has no inherited script. He's told to define masculinity for himself, to create his own meaning, to find purpose in relationships and self-expression. And the result is a generation of men who have no ground to stand on. They're floating. And when a woman shows interest, she becomes the ground. She becomes the meaning. She becomes the meaning. She becomes the mission. And the moment that happens, he's already lost. Walk through any major city and you'll see it. Men on dating apps swiping for hours, sending dozens of messages, getting no replies. Men in relationships bending themselves into shapes they don't recognize, trying to keep the peace, trying to avoid conflict, trying to be the partner she says she wants. Men in marriages sit in dead bedrooms, wondering where the passion went, wondering if this is just what long-term love looks like. They're told the problem is communication. They're told they need to be more emotionally available, more present, more willing to do the work. So they go to therapy, they read books, they listen to podcasts, they try harder, and nothing changes. Because the problem isn't a lack of effort. The problem is the frame. The frame is this. Modern men have been taught that their value comes from what they give to others. Their worth is measured by their utility, how much they provide, how much they sacrifice, how much they accommodate. This is reinforced everywhere. In schools, where boys are medicated for being restless. In workplaces, men are expected to suppress their competitiveness and adopt cooperative feminine communication styles. In relationships, men are told that masculinity is toxic unless it's softened, reformed, and made safe. The message is clear: your instincts are wrong. Your desires are problematic. Your strength is dangerous. The only way to be acceptable is to submit. And many men do submit. They apologize for taking up space. They suppress their opinions to avoid conflict. They defer to women in every domain, not because they believe women are right, but because they've been taught that disagreement is aggression. They become what the culture demands: harmless, inoffensive, endlessly agreeable. And then they wonder why women aren't attracted to them. They wonder why their relationships feel like obligations instead of passions. They wonder why they feel like boys in the bodies of men. Schopenhauer saw a version of this in his own time. He watched men abandon their intellectual rigor and philosophical depth to chase after women, to secure marriages, to gain social approval. He saw them sacrifice their autonomy for comfort, and he warned that a man who does this loses the only thing that makes him worth respecting, his independence. A man without independence is not a man. He's a dependent, and dependence, no matter how socially rewarded, is a form of slavery. This is why withdrawal is not weakness, it's not avoidance, it's not fear. Withdrawal is the refusal to participate in a system that demands your self-abandonment. It's the recognition that the game, as it's currently structured, is designed to make you lose, and the only winning move is not to play or to play by entirely different rules. Rules where your mission comes first, where your self-respect is non-negotiable, where a woman's approval is welcome but not necessary, where you'd rather be alone with your dignity than partnered and hollow. If a system demands your vulnerability but offers no protection, walking away isn't cowardice, it's wisdom. If a culture tells you to suppress your nature and then punishes you for being weak, refusing to comply isn't rebellion, it's sanity. If a woman expects you to sacrifice your purpose to prove your love, and then loses respect for you when you do, the problem is not your sacrifice. The problem is the expectation. And a man who can see, free, that, who can hold his frame even when the entire world is telling him he's wrong, has access to kind of power that doesn't need validation. It validates itself. This is what withdrawal does. It removes you from the cycle of seeking approval. It removes you from the negotiation of your worth. It removes you from the exhausting performance of trying to be enough for someone who will never tell you that you are. And in that removal, in that silence, something shifts. You stop being a man who needs women. You become a man who chooses them. And that difference, though invisible to most people, is everything. The cost of not seeing this is steep. It's not just a bad breakup or a frustrating dating life. It's the slow erosion of your self-respect. It's waking up one day and realizing you don't recognize the man in the mirror. It's the heaviness that settles into your chest when you realize you've spent years trying to earn love instead of living in a way that makes you worth loving. It's the paranoia that creeps in when you start to suspect that everyone, friends, family, women, sees you as useful but not valuable. It's the numbness that takes over when you stop feeling anything at all, because feeling would mean confronting how far you've drifted from the man you wanted to be. I've seen men in their 40s and 50s still carrying this weight, still trying to figure out why their marriages feel like contracts instead of connections, still wondering why their wives respect other men but not them, still believing that if they just give a little more, sacrifice a little more, bend a little more, things will change. They won't, because the structure is the problem, and the structure doesn't change until you stop feeding it. So what does it look like to stop feeding it? What does sovereignty in action actually mean? It's not a list of tactics. It's not a script you memorize. It's a reorientation of your entire psychological frame. It's the recognition that your life is not a negotiation. It's a declaration. And the moment you start living like that, everything changes. Start here. Notice when you're about to do something for approval. You're about to send a text. You're about to apologize for something you don't believe you did wrong. You're about to change your plans because she's upset. Pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it's true to who I am, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? If the answer is fear, don't do it. Sit with the discomfort. Let her be upset. Let the silence stretch. Let the tension exist without rushing to resolve it. This is where most men break. They can't tolerate the discomfort of a woman's disapproval, so they fold, they explain, they apologize, they fix, and in doing so, they communicate that her emotions are more important than their integrity. A sovereign man does the opposite. He allows her to feel what she feels without making it his responsibility to manage. He doesn't punish her for it. He doesn't withdraw in bitterness or retaliate with coldness. He simply remains anchored in his own center. He continues with his day. He continues with his mission. He gives her the space to process her emotions while refusing to let those emotions dictate his behavior. And what she learns from this over time is that he cannot be controlled by her moods, that his presence is not conditional on her approval, that he's not a man who needs her, he's a man who has chosen her. And that choice, because it's free, is worth something. Next, stop abandoning your mission when a woman enters your life. If you don't have a mission, this is your first task. Find something you care about more than being liked. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to change the world. It just has to be yours. A business you're building, a skill you're mastering, a body you're transforming, a project you're completing, something that organizes your time and energy around a goal that has nothing to do with romance. When a woman sees that you have this, she sees a man who exists independently of her. She sees a man who will not dissolve into her life. She sees a man who might leave if she doesn't meet him at his level, and that possibility that she could lose you not to another woman, but to your own path, is one of the most attractive forces in human psychology. Third, protect your attention like it's currency, because it is. In a world where everyone is distracted, depleted, scattered across a dozen apps and obligations, a man who can focus his attention is rare, and rarity creates value. Stop being available all the time. Stop responding to every text immediately. Stop filling every silence with words. Let there be gaps. Let her wonder what you're doing. Let her feel your absence, not as a game, not as manipulation, but as the natural consequence of a man who has a life that doesn't revolve around her. When you do give her your attention, give it fully, be present, be engaged. But when it's time to return to your own life, return without hesitation. Don't linger, don't negotiate, don't feel guilty. You're not abandoning her. You're modeling what it looks like to have boundaries. Fourth, refuse to explain yourself when you've done nothing wrong. This is where most men lose. A woman accuses them of something being distant, being selfish, not caring enough, and they immediately go into defense mode. They explain, they justify, they try to prove their innocence, and every word they speak digs the hole deeper, because the act of explaining is an admission of guilt. A sovereign man doesn't explain, he listens. He considers whether there's truth in what she's saying. If there is, he acknowledges it and changes. If there isn't, he simply says, "I hear you, but I don't agree," and moves on. He doesn't need her to understand. He doesn't need her to approve. He knows his own intentions, and that's enough. Finally, accept that some women will leave. Accept that some women will leave. Accept that some relationships will end. Accept that choosing sovereignty means choosing solitude over compromise. This is the cost, and it's not a small cost. There will be nights when you wonder if you made the right choice. There will be moments when you see other men in relationships, even bad relationships, and feel the pull of envy. There will be times when the loneliness feels heavier than the freedom. But here's what you need to understand. Loneliness with self-respect is survivable. Loneliness without it is not. A man can endure isolation. A man cannot endure self-abandonment. The moment you betray yourself to keep someone else, you've lost the only person you can never replace. Let me show you two futures. You're standing at the threshold right now, whether you realize it or not. Every man who hears this is standing at the same threshold. One path leads forward, one path leads back, and the choice you make in the next few months will determine which man you become. Path 1. You ignore this. You tell yourself it doesn't apply to you. You tell yourself your situation is different. Your relationship is different. She's different. You keep doing what you've been doing. You keep prioritizing her moods over your mission. You keep explaining yourself, apologizing, trying to earn her respect through effort. And 5 years from now, you're smaller, you're quieter. You've learned to suppress the parts of yourself that create friction. You've become agreeable, accommodating, invisible. She's still with you maybe, but she doesn't look at you the way she used to. She doesn't initiate, she doesn't pursue. The passion is gone, replaced by routine and obligation. You tell yourself this is what long-term love looks like. You tell yourself you're mature now, past the need for intensity. But late at night, when you're alone with your thoughts, you know the truth. You've traded your aliveness for stability, and the stability isn't even stable. It's fragile, held together by your constant effort to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to not rock the boat. You've become a man who lives in fear of his own woman, and that fear has poisoned everything. Path 2. You take this as initiation. You stop seeing this moment as a crisis and start seeing it as clarification. You recognize that the pain you're feeling is not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something's waking up in you. You start rebuilding your life around your own center. You stop checking your phone every 10 minutes. You stop organizing your schedule around her availability. You return to the gym. You return to your work. You return to the friendships and hobbies and projects you abandoned. At first, it feels wrong. It feels selfish. She might even accuse you of being distant, of not caring, of giving up on the relationship. And you let her say it. You don't defend, you don't explain, you just keep moving. And over time, something shifts. Maybe she starts pursuing you again. Maybe she doesn't. But it stops mattering because you're no longer building your life around her response. You're building it around your own respect. And 5 years from now, you're a different man. You're quieter, but not from suppression, from clarity. You speak less because you have less to prove. You're alone more, but the solitude doesn't frighten you. It feeds you. The people in your life are there because they respect you, not because you've made yourself useful to them. And if a woman enters your life, she enters on your terms. Not because you're controlling, but because you've become the kind of man who doesn't bend himself into shapes to be loved. You're whole, and that wholeness is more attractive than anything you could ever perform. These are the two paths, and the difference between them is not talent or luck or circumstance. It's willingness to sit with discomfort, willingness to be misunderstood, willingness to lose people who can't meet you at your level, willingness to choose your self-respect over your need to be liked. A man who centers his life around a woman slowly becomes the kind of man she cannot respect. This is not Tai Hua theory, which is not philosophy for its own sake. This is the pattern you've been living, whether you've had the language for it or not. Schopenhauer spent his life studying the will, the blind force that drives human desire. And he concluded that the only freedom a man has is the freedom to stop serving it, to stop letting biology write his decisions, to stop believing that happiness lives in another person's approval. She does not kill your purpose. She reflects its absence. If you've lost yourself in a relationship, it's not because she took you, it's because you gave yourself away. And the only way to get yourself back is to stop negotiating, stop explaining, stop trying to prove your worth to someone who should be trying to prove hers to you. Withdraw, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in sovereignty. Rebuild your life around something that can't leave you, your mission, your discipline, your self-respect. If this hit something in you, if you felt the weight of recognition while reading it, don't let it fade. Share this with the men who need it. Subscribe to this work and keep it alive for the men coming behind you, the ones still drowning in confusion, still trying to figure out why effort isn't enough. The man who withdraws is not running away. He's returning to himself, and that return is the most powerful thing a man can do.